Man.
From the glitter of gold-plated steaks to the insult of being turned away at the doors of Europe's most exclusive after-parties, the story of Salt Bae is one of the most dramatic falls from grace the internet has ever seen. Just a few years ago, Nusret Gökçe wasn't just a chef, he was a cultural phenomenon. A single flick of his wrist, a sprinkle of salt cascading from his fingertips was enough to crown him the golden man of social media. Celebrities, athletes, and billionaires rushed to his restaurants, not for the food, but for the moment, the chance to be part of a meme that had set the world on fire. But somewhere between the viral fame and the flashing cameras, the man behind the meme began to believe he was untouchable. That illusion carried him onto the pitch at the World Cup, directly into the cold stare of Lionel Messi, and eventually into headlines that branded him as arrogant, out of touch, and unwanted. His restaurants, once the most hyped luxury dining spots in the world, started shutting down, one after another. Customers spoke of outrageous bills, employees whispered of bad kitchens, and even FIFA itself stepped in to keep him away from the spotlight he craved so badly. So what really happened? How does someone rise from a poor butcher's kitchen in Istanbul to dining with presidents and movie stars, only to end up a punchline, a symbol of hollow luxury? This is not just the story of a man with a viral sprinkle. This is the story of how chasing the spotlight too far can destroy the empire it helped create. And to understand the fall, we have to go back to the moment the world first met him. It started in 2017. A short video, barely 36 seconds long, uploaded to Instagram. A lean Turkish butcher dressed in black carving steak with flair before finishing with a theatrical move. Salt falling down his forearm, bouncing from his fingertips, and cascading dramatically onto the meat. That single gesture was unlike anything people had seen before. Within days, the video exploded, racking up over 16 million views, plastered across every platform, turned into GIFs, reaction memes, and late-night TV jokes. Overnight, Nusret wasn't just a chef, he was Salt Bae, a living, breathing internet phenomenon. His Instagram skyrocketed from a modest following into the millions almost instantly. Suddenly, his restaurants weren't just dining spots, they were stages, and everyone who sat at his tables wanted more than food. They wanted the Salt Bae experience. Celebrities lined up for the show. David Beckham leaned back, smiling as the golden flakes rained down. Leonardo DiCaprio, a man who avoids the spotlight more than anyone, allowed himself to be filmed at Salt Bae's table. Bruno Mars, Cristiano Ronaldo, and countless athletes followed, each one posting the moment to their own millions of followers. It was free publicity on a scale no PR agency could ever buy, and Salt Bae understood it. He wasn't just selling steak, he was selling a brand of luxury that looked perfect on Instagram. Gold-plated meat, velvet ropes, red carpet treatment. A dinner bill could reach $140,000. An absurd figure. But for many, that was the point. To pay it was to prove you had arrived. In those years, Salt Bae was untouchable. The restaurants expanded into London, Dubai, New York, Los Angeles. The man who once cut meat in the back of a small Istanbul shop now stood at the top of the luxury food chain. But hidden inside that rise was the seed of a problem. Because Salt Bae wasn't famous for his craft alone. He was famous for being a meme. And memes don't last forever. And when a man used to the spotlight feels it slipping, he'll do anything to grab it back. December 18th, 2022. The biggest stage in world sports. Argentina had just defeated France in a historic World Cup final. A game already being called one of the greatest ever played. The players were emotional. Lionel Messi finally lifting the trophy that had eluded him his entire career. It was a sacred moment, a stage meant only for the champions. And then, suddenly, he appeared, Salt Bae, pushing his way onto the field, weaving through players, cameras rolling. At first, it looked like he was just another overexcited fan who had somehow slipped past security. But then came the shocking moment. He reached for the trophy itself, tugging it into his hands like it belonged to him. He posed with it, grinning, forcing players to join him. And when he tried to wrap his arm around Messi, the superstar barely looked at him, brushing him off with a cold, annoyed expression that said everything. The image went viral within minutes. But this time, it wasn't admiration. It was outrage.
This is like, on your wedding day, you have some wedding crasher comments like, I want a picture with you, even though you want to celebrate with your people. Right? Look, this is a big moment for the team. And then FIFA's investigating how this happened, what this happened. Well, guys, the calls are coming from inside the house because apparently this Salt Bae dude is really good friends with FIFA president Gianni Infantino.
Millions of fans saw it for what it was, blatant clout chasing. Salt Bae had turned the proudest night in Argentina's football history into a stage for himself, and the world hated it. Social media erupted with roasts. Memes compared him to a wedding crasher stealing the spotlight from the bride and groom. Football legends criticized the stunt as disrespectful, and the backlash wasn't just online. FIFA announced an internal investigation, questioning how Salt Bae had even gotten onto the pitch. Soon after, they released a statement. He was banned from future official events. For a man who built his brand on proximity to celebrities, this was devastating. Overnight, Salt Bae transformed from a familiar face welcomed at world-class events into a persona non grata, unwanted, uninvited, and unwelcome. But the real damage wasn't just the ban, it was the perception shift. For years, he had been the golden chef, the meme everyone wanted to share. Now, he was the intruder, the desperate clout chaser who couldn't tell the difference between admiration and annoyance. And that moment on the pitch, Messi's cold glare, the awkward smile Salt Bae forced as cameras caught him clutching the trophy, became a turning point. His golden aura had cracked, and the world would never see him the same again. But the World Cup fiasco was just the beginning. Because when the applause stops, people start asking harder questions. And the first thing they noticed, the price of his so-called luxury was nothing short of absurd. When the World Cup incident painted Salt Bae as a fame-hungry intruder, fans started looking more critically at the empire he had built. And the first thing that came under fire was the price tag. For years, people had whispered about the outrageous bills at his restaurants, but now those receipts were becoming headlines. A $31,000 dinner in London, a burger costing thousands, a single gold-covered steak served for a price that could buy a used car.
I actually tried that burger, everybody, when I was there. It is ridiculously expensive.
Social media exploded with disbelief. People weren't impressed anymore. They were angry. Videos surfaced of customers unwrapping the gold foil on their food and asking, what exactly am I paying for here? The answer wasn't flavor or quality, it was clout. The gold leaf added no taste, no nutrition, no culinary innovation. It was just decoration, an Instagram prop that dissolved into nothing the moment it touched the tongue.
Most every health and nutrition expert agrees that ultra-processed foods are bad for you. But we're noticing this weird anomaly in the carnivore community that I wanted to inform you about. I think you'll be very interested in this. So some researchers got together and they came up with this rating or classification system of ultra-processed food.
And to make things worse, many customers never even got the real Salt Bae experience. At the flagship locations, he might show up in person, sprinkle salt down his arm, and pose for photos. But as the chain expanded, reports emerged that he was sending out lookalikes, employees trained to mimic his gestures. Some diners joked online that they had met Paprika Bae or Pepper Bae instead, paying thousands for a knockoff performance.
Hold up, the Salt Bae guy from the meme has a chain of restaurants and they cost how much?
When you pay $31,000 to see Salt Bae, but don't eat meat.
So that's about $8,500 US. $8,500 to eat at a meme restaurant? What next? Is Disaster Girl gonna open a taco shop? Alien Guy's Barbecue? Kermit's House of Tea? I can't keep doing this. And the funny thing is, that's not even the real Salt Bae. He hires lookalikes to work at different locations. That's not Salt Bae, that's Paprika Bae.
What had once felt exclusive and glamorous was now starting to look like a scam. Even celebrities who once flaunted their visits began to turn on it. Influencers made parody videos roasting the ridiculous cost. Comedians roasted the idea of paying 5 figures for a meme on a plate. And memes spread like wildfire. When you pay $31,000 to see Salt Bae, but don't even eat meat. The internet laughed, but the laughter wasn't admiration. It was ridicule. Salt Bae tried to defend himself. Quality is never expensive, he posted defiantly, but the comment section told a different story. People weren't buying it anymore. One reply cut deep. Quality isn't expensive, but this is highway robbery. And once customers felt cheated, there was no going back. Because behind the golden facade, another truth was starting to leak out. The real cost of those overpriced meals wasn't just financial, it was human. And the people paying the steepest price weren't the customers. They were the ones working in his kitchens. The illusion of luxury relies on what the public sees. Glittering restaurants, gold-plated steaks, smiling celebrities. But behind those glass doors, a very different story was unfolding. Former employees began to speak out, and what they described sounded less like fine dining and more like survival games. One worker compared it to the Hunger Games. Staff lived in constant fear of being fired mid-shift, sometimes without explanation. Some claimed their passports were taken away, effectively trapping them. Others spoke about grueling hours that stretched deep into the night without proper overtime pay. Tips were allegedly withheld by management, leaving workers underpaid even as customers dropped thousands of dollars at the table. Reports surfaced of unsafe kitchen conditions, cost-cutting measures that left diners eating in freezing rooms because the heating was shut off, and a culture of intimidation where staff were too scared to speak out. These claims painted a stark contrast to the glossy Instagram posts Salt Bae curated daily. And while not every allegation could be independently verified, the volume of stories raised serious questions. Was this empire really built on culinary passion or on misusing? The internet didn't hesitate to answer. Posts and exposés spread quickly, and each new detail chipped away at the myth of Salt Bae as a symbol of success. Suddenly, the gold steaks looked less like luxury and more like a mask hiding something rotten beneath. Even health health authorities got involved. Certain branches faced citations for food safety violations. Former staff alleged corners were being cut to maintain profits, even as the restaurants charged astronomical prices. For diners, it meant paying for the best while being served under conditions far from it. For employees, it meant working in fear, watching the empire shine on the outside while crumbling within. This was a turning point in how the public saw it, because once the workers, the people who kept the show running, started revealing what was happening behind the curtain, the sparkle of Salt Bae's empire began to look like nothing more than tinfoil. And if the working conditions weren't bad enough, there was another controversy still haunting him. A decision made years earlier that many believed revealed Salt Bae's true colors, a choice that mixed food with social issues in the worst way possible. To understand why the cracks in Salt Bae's image grew so deep, you have to rewind to 2018. Venezuela was in the middle of one of the worst economic collapses in modern history. Hyperinflation had destroyed the value of the local currency. Families were struggling to afford bread, milk, even basic medicine. Images of people waiting in endless lines for food circled global news outlets. And then, in the middle of that crisis, a video appeared online. Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, sat at a table in Istanbul. In front of him, thick steaks plated with shimmering layers of gold. Behind him, Salt Bae himself, smiling proudly, slicing the meat with theatrical flair and sprinkling salt with the same exaggerated motion that had made him famous. The clip spread instantly, but this time it wasn't celebration, it was outrage. How could a man known for flaunting luxury welcome one of the most controversial leaders in the world at a time when millions of Venezuelans couldn't afford to feed their children? To many, it looked like Salt Bae was roasting their suffering, feeding extravagance to power while ordinary people starved. The backlash was fierce. International media ran headlines against the dinner. Protesters gathered outside some of his restaurants, chanting against the image of gold steaks being served during a humanitarian disaster. For Venezuelans, the moment became a symbol, a reminder of their struggles contrasted with the indifference of elites. Salt Bae tried to stay silent at first, but the silence only fueled the anger. Critics accused him of caring more about fame and connections than morality. To some, this was the moment his reputation was permanently stained. The meme chef had crossed from harmless entertainer into something darker, a symbol of tasteless excess and poor judgment, and the wound never fully healed. Even years later, whenever new controversies surfaced, overpriced menus, football scandals, failing restaurants, the Maduro dinner resurfaced in the conversation. It became evidence in the public's eyes that Salt Bae wasn't just clumsy in chasing fame. He was fundamentally tone-deaf to the world around him. If the gold steaks served to Maduro cracked the foundation of his reputation, the years that followed would shatter it completely, because the very people who once gave Salt Bae his aura, the celebrities, influencers, and fans who flocked to him, would soon become the ones to turn against him. At the height of his fame, Salt Bae didn't have to chase attention. It came to him. From Ronaldo to DiCaprio, Beckham to Bruno Mars, the most powerful names in sports and entertainment eagerly visited his restaurants, happy to be filmed and photographed with him. Each photo was like a stamp of approval, proof that Salt Bae was more than a meme. He was part of the inner circle of global icons. But after the controversies stacked up, the Maduro dinner, the $140,000 bills, the World Cup disaster, those same circles began to close their doors. Celebrities who once smiled at his table started roasting him instead. Football stars posted thinly veiled comments online about how fame can't replace respect, a message that many fans immediately linked back to Salt Bae. Social media piled on. Memes spread comparing him to a wedding crasher, a desperate attention seeker who forced himself into moments that weren't his. TikToks and parody skits roasted the ridiculousness of paying thousands for a gold steak. YouTube channels roasted him as the man who turned a meme into a scam. The laughter wasn't with him anymore, it was at him. What made it worse was that Salt Bae seemed oblivious. Even as the tide turned, he kept posting videos of himself sprinkling salt, serving golden meat, acting as though the adoration had never left. But the comment sections told a different story. Thousands of replies ridiculed him, asking if he thought anyone still cared. The same audiences who once elevated him now enjoyed tearing him down. This was more than just online roasting. It was a cultural shift. Salt Bae had thrived because celebrities endorsed him, but now those endorsements were gone. His brand, once synonymous with luxury and status, became shorthand for waste, arrogance, and hollow spectacle. And when your entire empire is built on image, losing the image means losing everything. By the mid-2020s, the celebrity spotlight that once defined him had flipped into a spotlight of shame. And as the world roasted him, his restaurants, the very foundation of his empire, began to collapse one by one. But his biggest insult was still waiting, a moment when the doors to high society literally slammed shut in his face. By 2025, Salt Bae's empire was already crumbling. U.S. restaurants shuttered, London profits sinking, celebrities turning their backs. But the most savage blow wasn't financial, it was symbolic.
Nusret! Nusret abi!
That moment came in June 2025 at the Champions League after-party. For years, these were the kinds of events where Salt Bae thrived. He wasn't just invited, he was expected. Cameras would follow him sprinkling salt over a table of superstars, his every move designed to go viral. But this time, the cameras captured something very different. Video spread online of Salt Bae walking toward the VIP entrance, only to be stopped cold by security. No red carpet, no eager fans, just a firm hand blocking him from entering the place where football legends were celebrating. The man who once strolled through elite gatherings with ease was now treated like an outsider. The clip went viral within hours. Memes flooded TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. People compared it to watching a magician get exposed mid-trip. The illusion shattered, the reality embarrassing. Headlines called it the most insulting moment of his career. Salt Bae tried to fight back. He released statements denying the story, claiming he hadn't even been invited to a party, insisting that people online had twisted the situation. But the explanations didn't matter. The image had already taken root. The once golden chef, rejected at the door, standing on the outside of the very world he had built his brand on. And that image carried more weight than any of his words, because Salt Bae's empire wasn't built on food alone. It was built on access. The idea that he belonged in the same circles as Messi, Beckham, Ronaldo, and the world's most powerful figures. Once the public saw him denied that access, the illusion collapsed. It was a bitter metaphor. In 2022, he forced his way onto the pitch to grab Messi's trophy, only to be coldly ignored. 3 years later, he couldn't even cross the threshold of a party celebrating the same sport. The distance between him and the spotlight had gone from uncomfortable to absolute. For a man who lived off the glamour of attention, this was the cruelest punishment. Not a scandal, not a lawsuit, not even financial loss, just silence. A world that had once cheered his every sprinkle now laughed as he was shut out of the frame. And that brings us to the final chapter, the lesson behind the rise and fall of Salt Bae. Salt Bae's story is bigger than one man. It's a case study in how viral fame can build empires and how quickly it can destroy them. When Nusret Gökçe sprinkled salt down his arm in 2017, he wasn't planning to change his life forever. He was just a butcher showing flair in the kitchen, but the internet took that moment and turned it into gold. Suddenly, he was a global celebrity. He opened restaurants in the most expensive cities in the world. He served presidents, athletes, and Hollywood stars. For a while, it looked unstoppable, but there was always a problem. His brand wasn't built on culinary mastery or innovation. It was built on a viral gimmick, a meme. And memes burn bright, but they don't last. Instead of grounding himself in the craft that first made him special, Salt Bae chased the meme until it consumed him. Every steak had to be gold-plated. Every moment had to be filmed. Every appearance had to be bigger, louder, flashier. The love of cooking that once defined him was buried under the need for attention. And once the attention turned negative, there was nothing left to hold on to. The outrageous bills looked like scams. The celebrity photos looked like clout chasing. The restaurants looked like hollow sets hiding bad work conditions. And the man himself, once admired for charisma, looked desperate, out of touch, and alone. In the end, Salt Bae became a symbol, not of luxury, but of emptiness. A reminder that fame without substance is fragile, that chasing the spotlight too hard can push it away forever. But behind the ridicule and the memes, there's still a human being. A man who rose from poverty to global fame through hard work, only to be blinded by the lights he craved. Was he a genius who seized opportunity at the perfect time? Or just another victim of viral culture, trapped in a golden glow of his own making? The truth probably lies somewhere in between, and maybe that's the real lesson. Memes fade, trends pass, and the spotlight always moves on. What lasts is the craft, the quiet work that doesn't need cameras or gold leaf. Salt Bae once had that. Whether he can find it again is a question only time will answer.